Let's go through my process of taking some ethnic wind samples that I will record in a DAW, create WAV files, and then load them into the Loris Synth application to convert them to EaganMatrix additive format that I'll then load into an EaganMatrix Micro to create a little resynthesis library that I will control with an Osmose playing on the keyboard, but also use a wind controller, in this case a Hornberg HP1, to impose more wind-like dynamic control on the output. You could use some other wind controller like a TEC or a Yamaha, whatever you like, as long as it can support outputting CCs. So let's go through. I'll just take this quickly through what I do. You can use some other method, of course, but this seems to work well for me. And remember, what is going to be output here is not a sample library, so it's not going to sound true to the actual instrument the way a sample library would. But we can get some pretty nice and accurate kind of lo-fi sampling using this method to create a little library that you can actually store on the micro. It can store up to 40 of these additive syntheses. And then I can kind of connect that to my Osmose or Continuum or whatever I like to use that micro as a little resynthesis library. Now, of course, you can also do this on your Continuum directly or Continuum Mini EaganMatrix module, and in the future, when Osmose supports the 10.4x firmware that will allow for Loris Resynthesis, you can run that on the Osmose directly at that point. So I brought up a DAW. I will bring up a sample library. In this case, I have East-West Raw ethnic library that I've basically selected an ethnic flute, an A here. I'll go in and I'm going to record these things on a single note. So I'll get out of this, I'll go into my DAW. I'm only going to record a very short sample because I don't want to really record more than a couple seconds worth of sample, because when I bring that into Loris, Loris will always create 512 slices, no matter what the length of my sample is. So the longer the sample, the longer the period between the slices, the less resolution you're going to have on your sonic output. So I'll just go in and I'll record something simply. That's all I need to do. I'll take that. I will then go in, export it to a WAV file, and I can do this over and over again for all of the samples that I want to convert in the Loris tool. This is all I do when I want to just kind of make a lo-fi sampler on one note. Of course, this is not going to be one note per note played on the keyboard, so I won't really have much differentiation between the harmonic spectrum from range to range. I can play a little bit with that using formants, but I'm not really even going to use formants in this video. If you're only recording a single note, you may not get much out of formants. And also, if you're going to record drums or very complex harmonic stuff, or very noisy stuff, that's another case where formants might not do you very much good. So I've got my WAV file. All right, I have the Loris tool up. What I'll do now is I'll take my ney sample, I'll drag that into the editing window. I'll normalize, isolate the part of this that I want to extract. I don't really want too much silence at the beginning of my extraction because this might be repeated over and over again. I don't want to be too much lag between when I press my finger and when the sound starts. So I'll crop things the way I kind of like it. I could crop it down, but now I'll play it. Maybe reduce the output volume of the play a little bit. Maybe reduce that a bit. Okay, now I'll analyze it with one of my standard predefined settings. I'll start with standard. Listening to each one, getting one that I think is okay. Let's try the standard. You can see here on the standard output for the fundamental frequencies, there's a little bit of a very low frequency to begin with. I might not want that. I can remove that by making my min frequency higher than 196, re-estimating, and now I have more of a fundamental that I want because I want this to be pretty much one steady tone. It will waver a bit, of course, due to the output of the original sample. And now, when I have something that I like, I'll see if I can channelize it. Ooh, that really creates a nasty sound. And it just turns out that this one has some issues when I'm making my conversion, because I'm not going to be using any formants on this. I might decide in this case to just extract it raw. I could try maybe going to voices and that also creates some problems for me. Not all samples are going to convert nicely. You just have to be aware of this. And you can use a few different techniques to maybe make them work out. Some might not work out at all. You just have to kind of play with it. Because I don't need formants, what I'll do is I'll just extract this raw. There I do my extraction. You'll see the upper partials have quite a bit of noise on it on this sample. Let me play that. That doesn't sound so bad. So now what I can do, I know I want to save this in the 4th slot of my little library. I could save it in the 1st slot, but the nay is going to be in the 4th slot. So what I'll do is I'll just save 4. I'll save that to a analysis file. And now that file can be loaded in later, or I can just say send saved analysis to EM right now, and it'll load it right up. I've already loaded this, so we don't have to go through that step. Let's take another example. Maybe one of my dedukes. We'll load that up. We'll do a similar process. We'll normalize it. We'll extract the part that we want to convert. We will play it. All right, we'll analyze it. Okay. We see here at the end, there's a little trailing note in terms of fundamental frequency. I might not want that, so let me just take the min frequency past that, re-estimate, all right, and we'll analyze again, maybe with the voice. All right, and let's see what happens if we channelize and then simplify. We're at 58. That's close to where we want. Actually, I probably can get that closer to 64 if I do a similar thing, but I'll bring the max frequency up a bit, and that will increase the number of partials that it will detect. We'll analyze again. You always have to analyze before you redo your partial extraction. So we'll try channelizing again. Simplify. Ooh, we're getting really close to where we want to be. Maybe we'll raise that up just a bit more. Almost there. Okay. Ooh, I'm one more than I need. That's fine. I will extract my channelized partials from this one. It looks like we have a much better profile here, a lot less noise in the upper partials. So then what I can do is select a place for that. Let's put this one, say, at 11. I'll show you how it works. I'll save that. I'll call that DUK, and I will create my analysis. And then I will send that analysis, whatever the last analysis you created. If you say send saved analysis, it will use that. If you go and you bring up an overlay, then you can't send saved analysis again. You'll either have to redo it, or you can go and drag your analysis into this analysis drop to load it. But since I haven't done anything else, I'll just send that. And what I need to do now is select where I want to send it. I'm going to send it to my EaganMatrix Micro. That turns blue, so I know it's connected. And then I can say send saved analysis. It will use the last one I saved if I haven't done any other operations. And now it'll go through and take a little bit of time to save that analysis to slot 11 on my EaganMatrix Micro. And we'll just let that complete. There, it's completed, and it automatically brings up the cycling overlay. Well, we can go and we can play it with the overlay, but I'm going to create my own custom overlays for Wind Controller playing. But I can go in and check. You can see I have my 10 winds that I've already loaded up. One of them is a raw analysis. And you can see on slot 11, there's a dedupe that I just loaded. And of course, you have 40 available slots that you can load into your additive bank. So once my analyses have been created and loaded in, now it's time for me to go and bring up the preset I've created to play on the Osmose with a Wind Controller. So I have things set up where I have my EaganMatrix Micro connected to my computer over USB. I have my Hornberg HB1 Wind Controller connected up. I have the Osmose USB connected up, all to a USB switch that's connected to the computer. I brought up the editor with the special preset that I've created for playing loris analyses with Wind Controller support. And the first thing I want to make sure I do, because I'm playing this through the editor in this case, if not, I would have to have some USB MIDI host connection set up. I'll go into MIDI and global settings. I'll look and see the external one music interface is connected to the Osmose. So the Osmose is going to be playing this preset, and the Wind Controller, the HB1, is also connected as an external music data interface. So both these can play at the same time and control my preset running on the EaganMatrix Micro. Now the preset itself, I'm not going to go into any great detail here, but the main aspects of it are, number one, on the outputs, I put a scaler, a multiplier that is controlled by macro 4. So if I set my Wind Controller to CC15, which is macro 4, when I play on the Wind Controller, you'll see that the fourth macro, I have my Wind Controller set up here on my neck. You can see when I blow into the Wind Controller, macro controller 4 is increased, and if I play in the Osmose, which is set as an external MPE device, you can see it's seeing the Osmose MIDI up top on the surface display, but there's no sound because I haven't blown it yet. If I blow into the controller and then play, then I can get my sound. So this is how the Wind Controller can work. Now, as it just turns out, when you have a Wind Controller set up this way, you can get some articulations with your breath that is very difficult to do on the Osmose itself. If I wanted to play some repeated notes, I can actually do some double tonguing, triple tonguing. It's very nice. If you set this up correctly, you can do stuff that's very difficult to do on the keyboard, but will give you that nice wind-like sound using a breath controller. Of course, you could set this up to use the Warbler Wind Controller too, as some of the other micro presets are, but I'm interested here in letting you play the Osmose as you normally would, but use a Wind Controller for added dynamic presence, for added wind-like output. By the way, this is also a good thing to do if you're using SWAM instruments. Use a Wind Controller on those as well as playing on the Osmose, and you'll get more realistic wind sounds on saxes and other SWAM instruments. So that's the first part of this preset. The second part is all the other stuff I've done to allow this to, number one, select up to 10 of my additive presets. You can see I've used two additive banks here. They're set to the same decade. In the next version of firmware, these will always be mapped together like this. And I can select another sound, let's say the bansuri. Now, one of the things you'll notice is you may not get a sound exactly like a bansuri out of here. This is not really sampling. You'll have to play around a bit. In this particular setup, I'm not using any formants. I'm basically playing this as if it's raw analyses. As it turns out, I've found that some of the wind conversions actually sound better if I don't put formant processing on them. For example, let me go and I'll select an ocarina, and that sounds pretty good actually. So I've set this up so that I have my 10 presets that are loaded into the first decade, the first 10 analysis slots. In the editor, slots are indexed 0 to 9. When you're in the Loris tool, you will save them indexed 1 to 10. I can go in, and in the editor, I can see what's in each slot as well as I can in the Loris tool. And if I had other slots filled up, I could just select another bank, and then this preset would work as is, only on the other bank you set. So if you wanted to, you could store 40 wind instruments, and of course I can then change this to be more something that would be playing a drum or percussion instrument instead of a wind instrument. You can see here I have a breath control. I wouldn't put that on a percussive preset. Maybe I'll do one up in a similar manner here for percussion instruments with a percussion preset overlay. And so quickly going through here, I can select my analysis set, and you can think of that as a lo-fi sample. And I can, on the Osmose, impose my vibrato. I've set the Osmose up, by the way, because I'm not really using a CC74 Aftertouch Y on this. What I'm doing is I have a second additive bank that's coming in that is indexed with a little different shape generator shapes to give a little more flexible sound. So I set this up so the mod slider on the Osmose controls bringing that additive bank 2 in. I have a separate breath control that I can control manually or with CC 16 if I want, that will bring in more filtered noise on a sound. So if the sound is not breathy enough, I can increase that with this control. And then the other two controls are my index and index speed. This is how far into the analysis I'm going to index and what speed I'm indexing at. The faster I index, the more I'm going to pretty much pass over initial transients and other things like that. And if it was a long sample, say a voice sample, I could alter the speed that that vocal sample was playing back at with this index speed. You might not find too much difference setting the index speed on a conversion of a single note the way we have it here. But fortunately, when you do your conversions, the EaganMatrix will automatically take care of scaling your notes properly for playing them on continuum surface or the Osmose in this case. And one thing you can kind of hear is if I set this index all the way to the end and play, you'll see the note cuts out. Because when you're playing, the note will end on the last indexed amplitude and keep playing that way, the way this is set up. Well, because almost all of our samples end in silence or very low amplitude, if I would have the index always go to the end, that would be more like playing individual notes that would cut off at the speed of your index setting. So what I'll do is I'll play and bring that index back to a point where it's sitting on one of those amplitude slices that's the right amplitude and the right harmonic spectrum to end the note and continue playing it. We could call this an overlay, even though it doesn't use 14-bit macros, but still functions in a similar way. Now, I'll make all these special purpose overlays that I have made here for different purposes available as part of my explorations folder when next EaganMatrix release is put out. So now let's just play around a bit.